Now,
the sign reading British Cypher Headquarters, no admittance without authority, hung next to the sentry box outside the large red-bricked building. A guard stood stiffly to attention in the time-honoured tradition. It was raining. Not pouring down, but a steady drizzle, the sort of rain that gently soaks one to the skin. The winter morning was a quiet one. No sound of traffic from the deserted road. And then... From the inner courtyard stumbled a man, well-built, well-dressed. He ran in panic from the main building across the yard towards the guard, who paid no attention to his cries. Nearing the gate, a small van swung towards him.
No! No! No!
From the van, a man in a white coat stretched out an arm. In his hand, he held a blunt-nosed pistol with a silencer attached. He fired. Episode 1 of this story, in which John Steed and Emma Peel find themselves assigned to a case which becomes known as the super-secret Cypher Snatch. Roger Jarrett yelled as the bullet smashed into his body. He fell untidily into a puddle. Blood flowed into the water as he died. From the van bearing the sign Classy Glass Cleaning, 2 men climbed down. They moved swiftly, picking up the body and throwing it callously into the back of the van.
You will have him taken care of. Come on, let's go.
And all the time, the guard on duty stood with his eyes straight in front of him, unseeing and unhearing, stiff to attention. The van pulled away, vanished down the empty street. Time passed. And along that same street came a large black limousine. It stopped at the entrance. From the wheel, George Webster, dignified director of British Cypher Headquarters, leaned from the window and said to the guard,
"Hello, Masters. What kind of day has it been?"
"Oh, usual Monday, Mr. Webster. Routine, boring."
That's the reply I like to hear. In other words, no one has stolen the secret papers.
No chance, sir. No chance.
Good.
No chance. Nothing ever happens in this place. Routine and boring. That's all it is. Routine and boring.
In John Steed's apartment, Mother was holding a meeting. Only 3 people were present: John Steed, Emma Peel, and Mother.
Of course, I considered it all terribly carefully before I said yes.
Of course, Mother.
Then MI12 got in touch and asked for our cooperation. I was, of course, a little inclined to tell them to conduct their own business in their usual inefficient manner and allow us to go on solving everything that we were given. But, well, it goes without saying that just to be asked is a compliment. Quite. A feather in our caps, in fact.
More than one. A whole nestful.
An Indian headdress.
A mattress?
I knew you'd be inclined to lie down on the job, Steed. It's also a thundering great bore. I mean, I ask you, MI12 losing one of their men like that, and then having the audacity to ask us to find him.
It is annoying.
Infuriating. That's what I said, but... Pour another cocktail, Steed, and I'll tell you all. Miss Peel?
I think not. One of us has to remember what this is all about.
Yes. Well, now, yes. Cheers. To another case successfully accomplished.
We have to start on it yet.
Foregone conclusion, Steed, foregone conclusion.
Roger Jarrett. That was his name? I mean, is his name?
It could be was. In fact, it sounds like was. Yes, that's the name.
How long has he been missing?
24 hours. That's MI12 for you. Complete panic. Typical of them. They have such a terrible preoccupation with gimmicks and gadgets. I told them, no gadget will ever replace the man.
Or the woman.
Yes.
Where does all this start, Mother?
It starts in the apartment of Roger Jarrett, of course, shortly after he left it.
And ends?
At the Cypher headquarters.
Right. Then I'll take Jarrett's apartment.
And I'll brush up on the ciphers.
And I'll sit here and have another cocktail and wish you both the best of British luck.
An hour later, John Steed drove his rolls into the yard of the British Cypher headquarters and parked it under the sign that read, "Strictly no parking."
Always start in the proper manner. Train him early.
Steed tapped his bowler more firmly on his head and, jauntily swinging his umbrella, strolled up the steps and into the reception foyer. 10 minutes later, he was shown into the very plush suite of the chairman, George Webster, who rose from behind the desk.
Steed, isn't it? John Steed, good morning.
That's right. Good morning. I suppose the ministry warned you to expect me.
Yes, I had a phone call half an hour ago. I must confess that I didn't really understand what it was all about.
No, it's just routine, really. We have to check up, you know.
Oh, quite. Well, won't you sit down?
Thank you.
Tell me what it's all about.
Jarrett.
I beg your pardon?
A man named Jarrett. Not our department, MI12, actually. He's a spot security check man. That means he's given the right to call on any department without notice and inspect their security. He called here yesterday.
He did?
Yes, early. I want to know what time he left.
But I know nothing of this, nothing at all. Jarrett, you say?
No, that's right. I have a photograph here. Here you are.
I've never seen this man in my life.
You sure?
Quite sure. Just a moment, I'll ask Murray. He's security personnel. He must have been consulted if this man called here.
Webster reached for the phone, barked out an order, and a few minutes later a young man entered from the inner office.
You called me, sir?
Steed, John Steed, called to do a routine check on a man from MI12. Name of Jarrett, called here yesterday. And this is his photograph.
Yes?
I'll be quite frank with you. Jarrett has disappeared. We know he was here at the Cypher headquarters early yesterday morning.
I can't recall it, Murray. As director of this HQ, I'm aware of everything that goes on. If I've been misinformed...
I don't think you have, sir. I record all arrivals and departures.
And you know nothing of Jarrett's visit?
Not a thing. I most certainly didn't see this man in here yesterday, or any other day for that matter.
Mm-hmm. Well, then perhaps he called later. Lunchtime, perhaps, when you weren't here.
No, not yesterday. I didn't leave the building yesterday. The weather was so bad I didn't go out at lunchtime.
Neither did I. I'm sorry, Mr. Steed, but I think you'll have to accept the fact that this man Jarrett wasn't here. If he's disappeared, then it must have been before he was due here. And that's all we can do to help you.
Mother?
Steed here, Mother. Checked at Cypher HQ. Webster and his security man say Jarrett didn't visit them yesterday.
Well, that's not the information we were given.
No. I questioned all the staff, and they said Jarrett has never called at that headquarters, not at any time.
But he must have done it sometime.
Quite. Yet they deny it. And I'm quite sure they're all lying. But why?
That, Steed, is something you must find out. And at once.
Yes, any news from Mrs. Peel?
Not yet. One can only hope that she'll be a little more constructive than you have been. She's at Jarrett's apartment with Ferret.
Who?
Ferret, from MI12's forensic department, prides himself on being a modern Sherlock Holmes.
Oh. Right, I'll keep in touch.
Do that, Steed, do that. Now, where was I? Oh, yes, most important. Delicious.
In Jarrett's apartment, Ferret was going over everything in a thoroughly professional way. His methods were not to touch, but to examine in great detail. Mrs. Peel wandered about carelessly, picking up and putting down anything she chose.
There's a postcard here. It reads, "With all my love, Yvette."
That means assignment completed. Yvette is our man in Paris.
You MI12 people do go in for intrigue, don't you?
Very careless of Jarrett. He should have destroyed that immediately. Peters, have you finished photographing in the bedroom?
Yes, sir, just a few prints in the bathroom.
Right. And then cover that bookcase in the area around the door.
I thought the best type of agents left messages concealed almost everywhere.
There are messages enough. It's only a question of thinking things out.
Such as?
The bottle of milk in the kitchen is sour.
So?
The dregs in this teacup have gone mouldy.
So?
The shaving brush in the bathroom is bone dry.
Ingenious. So?
Each one is a clue, Mrs. Peel. All these facts add up to prove that Jarrett hasn't been in this flat for 2 days.
Mrs. Peel, who had been wandering about the place looking under cushions, straightening the carpets and toying with the ornaments, strolled to the window. Beneath the window was a window seat, large and comfortable. She sat on it and stared out into the street. Then, on an impulse, she got up and raised the lid of the window seat.
Yes, I think I can say without fear of contradiction that Jarrett left here on Sunday.
I'm afraid not, Mr. Ferret.
I beg your pardon.
It would seem he didn't leave here at all. Look.
Ferret moved over to where Mrs. Peel stood and looked down into the window seat. The sightless eyes of Arthur Jarrett stared up at him.
Dead. Shot. You don't have to be a genius to ferret that one out, do you?
Now, Ferret, the forensic expert from MI12, was very thorough in his examination of Arthur Jarrett's apartment. He was intent on showing Mrs. Peel how professional he was. He and Peters, the cameraman, went about things systematically, hardly touching a thing. Mrs. Peel, on the other hand, sauntered casually about, picking things up and dropping them.
Yes, there's no doubt about it. All the clues point to the fact that Arthur Jarrett left here on Sunday.
Mrs. Peel, who'd been sitting on the window seat, suddenly got up and, on an impulse, lifted the lid of the seat.
I'm afraid not, Mr. Ferret.
I beg your pardon?
Come over here. Look at this. It would seem he didn't leave here at all.
Ferret did so and found himself gazing down into the sightless eyes of Arthur Jarrett. He'd been shot and couldn't have been more dead. Episode 2 of this story, in which John Steed and Emma Peel ponder over the death of Arthur Jarrett and find there is even more murder planned in the super-secret Cypher Snatch. Mother had accepted the task of finding Arthur Jarrett, MI12's missing security man, with some satisfaction. It was always pleasing to be asked to help a superior department, and Steed and Mrs. Peel had been quickly assigned to the case. But Steed's interview with George Webster at Cypher headquarters had been far from satisfactory. With an instinct cultivated over the years, Steed sensed that something in the headquarters was very wrong. All the staff denied ever seeing Jarrett, and yet Steed had his doubts. He'd reported to Mother and continued to browse about the building, much to George Webster's annoyance.
I fail to see that we can help you further, Mr. Steed. You've interviewed all my staff. They've all corroborated what our security man Murray told you. People do not wander in and out of this building. Your Mr. Jarrett was never here.
So everyone says. The weather.
I beg your pardon?
Murray said he didn't go out to lunch yesterday because the weather was against it. Now, what did he mean by that?
Obviously, that it rained heavily yesterday, and so he had his lunch in his office. Most of the staff did the same.
Rain, did it?
Well, maybe not in town, but it did here. And now, Mr. Steed, I do appreciate your concern. I'd like to help you, but it's quite clear that none of us is able to, and so, when I am rather busy.
Yes, of course.
Steed got up and reached for his hat and umbrella. As he did so, he noticed a cigarette lighter half hidden beneath some files. He glanced at Webster's desk. The large ashtray was empty and spotlessly clean. Steed took a cigarette case from an inner pocket.
Smoke?
I don't, thank you. Look, Mr. Steed.
Oh, it's all right. I'll not interrupt you further. Sorry if I appear to be worrying things a little, but, you know, an establishment like this, responsible for all top-secret codes, well, where security is concerned, we do tend to worry, you know.
You've seen our precautions. The whole perimeter of the building is wired. Every filing cabinet is connected to an alarm system. I have a master alarm on my desk. A touch of this button.
Like this?
Steed reached over and jabbed the button Webster had indicated. As the sirens wailed out, the doors burst open. 3 security guards with revolvers burst into the room.
What is that?
What's wrong? What's the trouble?
It's all right, gentlemen. Just testing. Nothing else. Just testing. It's very impressive, Mr. Webster.
Under cover of this confusion, Steed slipped the cigarette lighter into his pocket. He placed his bowler on his head, swung his umbrella, said,
"Good day, gentlemen,"
and left. In Jarrett's apartment, Mrs. Peel watched with interest as Peters, the photographer, took several shots of the dead man in the window seat.
You don't suppose that we could move him, Mr. Ferret?
Certainly not.
Oh, very well. But I have an idea that this is his bad side. Most people photograph better with the left profile.
This isn't a screen test. Now, Mrs. Peel, if you'll be so good as to make a list of his personal possessions...
Well, if you think it's necessary, very well.
I do. In duplicate, please.
You MI12 boys are very thorough. All right.
Ferret slipped on a pair of white gloves and extracted a comb from the dead man's pocket.
Combs? One?
Wrong. It's not a comb. It's a high-frequency resonator. A special issue. You see? It clicks open. The antenna springs out, so...
How clever. That a tie-pin he's wearing?
A miniature microphone.
Oh. Cufflinks? One pair?
Wrong. A recorder and playback units. One set.
Oh, sorry. But you will agree that this is his wallet.
Sorry. A survival kit. A K. A 4 standard issue.
And this can't be a cigarette case, can it?
No. A .22 automatic pistol with twin magazines and self-loader. You open it to fire.
In my department, a gun is a gun is a gun. What's this? A gun?
Mrs. Peel produced a small pocket revolver from the dead man's top pocket.
No. That's a cigarette lighter. Press the trigger and...
You people really are intent on making life complicated, aren't you? I suppose this fountain pen is a hand-operated, gas-cooled, short-range grenade launcher.
Hard luck. That's his dispatch case.
But of course. How could it be anything else? How's it work?
Like this. Unscrew the nib. Now, a sheet of paper inside.
Oh, how very odd. It's just the page of a calendar. Monday, April the 1st. Yesterday.
Let's see, what's so very special about yesterday?
His death, perhaps?
That's why the page of a calendar. Better photograph it, Peters.
Right.
Yeah, of course, the one thing that could help us is missing. It really is most annoying.
And what is that?
His cigarette lighter. I've been through all his pockets, and it isn't there. But it should be there. No agent would go on a job without it.
Well, not even if he didn't smoke?
No, that's immaterial. He was issued with a cigarette lighter, and that was a camera.
Oh, I suppose I should have guessed. A single-lens, reflex, fully automatic, magazine-load cigarette lighter.
Yeah, precisely. And it's missing.
Well, I finished here, Mr. Ferret. What now?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, lunch and back to Steed's apartment. Oh, I bet Mother's polished off all those cocktails. But I better go and report this to him. Would you care to come along, Peters? Ferret, you'll see to all this, won't you?
Leave it to me, Mrs. Peel. Leave it all to me.
I think you'll find the gin a little bruised, Mrs. Peel. Sorry.
Oh, not at all, Mother. It's delicious. Well up to your usual.
Steed has inferior vermouth. I must speak to him about it. So, Jarrett is dead, and his camera cigarette lighter is missing.
That's right.
That wouldn't be what you were talking about, would it?
John Steed entered the room, walked across to where Mother was sitting, and dropped a lighter into his lap.
Oh, Steed. Splendid, yes. Yes, that's Jarrett's all right. From where?
George Webster's office at Cypher HQ. It had a film in it, and I had it developed. These are the enlarged prints. Interested, Mrs. Peel?
Fascinated, Steed. 3 shots. This one is the Cypher office. It's just a general view of the outer office. Girls working, nothing unusual. Then there's an exterior of one of the buildings, and the third is...
Of George Webster sitting at his desk.
Then you were right. He did get into the building.
The camera cannot lie, which is more than I can say for the director.
Well, that's impossible. Webster can't lie. We went to school together.
He swore on a stack of service manuals that he'd never set eyes on Arthur Jarrett.
Oh, impossible. Webster has a triple-star clearance. He can't lie.
Well, I'm delighted to hear it, Mother. That's where I found the lighter.
Someone else might have taken it there.
Wait a minute. Where's the magnifying glass?
Mrs. Peel picked up a magnifying glass and studied the shot of Webster's office.
The calendar on Webster's desk. It's the same page as the one we found in Jarrett's dispatch case. In his pen.
Oh, it's all very disturbing. Every code we use comes from Cypher HQ. If there's a leakage there, well...
These photographs, there's no point to them. Why should Jarrett go to all the trouble of taking sneak pictures like these?
Why, indeed. To prove that he was there, perhaps?
But why bother? Unless he knew he wasn't going to get out.
I think we should hand these over to Peters. Get him to blow them up even bigger on his projector. There just might be a hidden clue somewhere.
Very well. Take them down to the ministry, Mrs. Peel. I'll remain here with Steve for a little while longer. We have work to do. I must teach Steed how to make a really good cocktail.
Mrs. Peel left at that point. She dropped the prints in at Peter's photographic laboratory at the ministry and went home to change. As she drove away from the ministry, a small van marked Classy Glass Cleaning, always top of the social ladder, drew up outside. 2 men were in it. Their names, Vickers and Maskin.
Think she's passed them on to the lab, boys?
Well, practically certain.
Then we better get to work, hadn't we?
Right.
The 2 men donned white coats, took ladders from the back of the van and buckets.
You find this useful?
Vickers took a gun from the van and dropped it into Maskin's bucket. Maskin acknowledged it with a nod and, whistling tunelessly, propped his ladder against the outer wall of the building.
Third from the top, then, is it?
That's right.
Okay, here goes.
Maskin climbed the ladder, a window cleaner at work. No one in the whole of the street even noticed him. A short while after this, John Steed's telephone rang.
Steed?
Mr. Steed Peters here. These photographs that Mrs. Peel dropped in, I've got them on the projector at the moment. And, just a moment. There's someone at the...
Hello, Peters. Peters, what is it? What the devil is it?
Trouble, Steed. Sounds like it.
It sounds like big trouble, Mother. In fact, it sounds like murder.
No.
Yeah, the window's the third one from the top, isn't it, Vickers?
That's right.
Okay, here goes.
The man called Maskin grabbed his window cleaning gear and began to climb the ladder he'd propped against the red-bricked wall of the ministry. Just a window cleaner at work. No one gave him a second glance. A short while after that, John Steed's telephone rang.
John Steed?
Mr. Steed Peters here from the ministry.
Oh, yes, please.
There's photographs that Mrs. Peel dropped in. I've got them on the projector. Just a moment. There's someone at the...
Hello, Peters. Peters, what is it? What's happened?
Trouble, Steed. It sounds like it.
It sounds like big trouble, Mother. In fact, it sounds like murder.
Episode 3 of this story, in which John Steed and Emma Peel look into the window cleaning business in the odd case of the super-secret Cypher Snatch. John Steed and Emma Peel were investigating the murder of Arthur Jarrett, a top ministry security agent of MI12. Jarrett had disappeared while checking on the security at the British Cypher headquarters. Steed had called at the headquarters and been puzzled to find that all the staff denied ever seeing Jarrett. Mrs. Peel, checking with Ferret, a forensic expert, had discovered Jarrett's body in the window seat of his own apartment. Later, from the evidence of Jarrett's miniature camera, it was clear that he had visited the Cypher headquarters. Mrs. Peel had passed over some photographs to Peters, the photographic expert at the ministry, And it was while Peters was making a phone call to Steed to report on his findings that Steed heard a shot ring out. He didn't need any urging from Mother to get over to the Ministry at top speed, collecting Mrs. Peel on the way.
This way, Mrs. Peel.
Wow, what a shambles. The whole place is wrecked.
Yeah, someone made sure of this, all right. They made sure of Peters, too. Up there on the floor. He's dead, all right.
Shot through the window.
Yes, looks like it. Glass over everywhere. The projector he was using has been smashed to pieces.
Yes. Hey, look at this. A tray containing charred ashes. Ashes of the photographs I gave him. So they were important.
Must have been. Fell in by the window, having shot Peters just as he was making his report to me.
He got him by climbing this ladder. It's still here.
Foresight. It's not every assassin who carries his own ladder.
In broad daylight, too.
They seem to get away with quite a few things in broad daylight.
Especially murder. Sheer audacity.
Right. But if Peters didn't have time to tell us what he'd found...
Well, at least we're on the right track.
And we've still got the negatives.
Then we can make more prints.
Precisely. Would you care to join me in my dark room, Mrs. Peel?
You think it's safe?
Oh, I shouldn't think so. You've seen my etchings before. Anyway, why not my bromide papers?
Well, as long as they aren't too overexposed. Shall we go?
Mrs. Peel climbed nimbly through the window and, gripping the ladder with the inside of her feet, slid swiftly down to the pavement.
No end to that woman's talents.
In Steed's apartment, Mother was sampling a dry sherry and talking to George Webster of Cypher HQ on the telephone.
Yes, George, old boy, I'm afraid it is serious. Jarrett is dead.
Terribly sorry to hear that, Mother, but really partly our responsibility. We didn't know him, you know.
That's not what MI12 say.
But to the devil with them. They're always wishing things onto others. Darn place is a law unto itself. To lose a man or two and think it's got to be someone else's fault and not their own carelessness. I repeat, we've all got our own jobs to
It's the security angle that worries them. Your place supplies all the codes of the country. Anyone penetrating your security gets information on all other departments.
We know that. That's why our security is so good. Can't be broken.
And if I told you I had photographs taken in your own office only yesterday...
I'd say you were stark raving mad.
A bit bitter.
What's that? Of course I'd be bitter.
I'm talking of my sherry. All right, George, old boy, if you're sure you're right, then of course I have to take your word for it.
I know I am, Mother. Thanks for the call. If I can help in any way, let me know. Bye.
Bye. One of us is a blithering idiot, and it's not me. And this is a most inferior sherry. I shall have to go home to get a decent drink.
These prints seem about right, Steed. I'll just fix them and then you can turn the light on.
Right. Let's take a keen look.
Blot them off, leave them to dry naturally. There we are.
Magnifying glass. Nary a clue in sight. There has to be one somewhere.
Steed, this one, the exterior of the courtyard, right outside the Cypher headquarters. Look, there in the corner, a van with ladders on the roof. Ladders, Steed?
Clever girl. Yes, I think I can just make out the lettering on the side of the van. Classy glass cleaners.
Window cleaners. Again?
Ladders?
In broad daylight? You expecting a visitor?
Oh, not that I know of. Mother will see to it.
But Mother, in his wheelchair, merely raised his voice and said,
Come in. The formidable ferret from forensics. Come in and close the door. I'm allergic to draughts and rodents.
Hello, Mother. Steed and Mrs. Peel here.
In there.
Mother indicated the kitchen with a gesture of his glass.
Cooking up something, or rather, something is developing in there.
What?
I hate to think. You're on duty, of course, Ferret?
Yes. Yes, I suppose I am.
Too bad. I know how strict your department is about drinking.
Well, actually, I...
No, I don't think you should either.
Oh, hello there, Ferret. What's new?
Ferret is on duty and not drinking. That's new. I presume, Ferret, that your department is now in a state of complete panic.
Yeah, pretty nearly. First Jarrett and now Peters.
Quite status quo, complete panic. What are you planning to do about it? Turn to us once again?
Well, the fact is, we thought we should put someone else into Cypher headquarters.
Put someone else in?
I see. They seem to have been all prepared to deal with Jarrett.
Webster denies it, of course. I think his mind is going. Getting too old. Pity, used to play quite a good rubber of bridge in his day. Introduce who into Cypher headquarters, Ferret?
Well, this time it would have to be clandestine. Of course, there's someone from outside our department who's completely trustworthy.
Ah, then it would have to be someone outside, of course.
Yes, someone who could move in smoothly without creating undue attention. Yeah, of course, the position will qualify for the 5 shillings a day danger allowance.
Who could refuse that?
Who exactly do they have in mind?
Well, you, Mrs. Peel, to start tomorrow.
Me? But I...
That is, of course, if Mother allows it.
Oh, but of course. Mustn't forget that extra 5 shillings a day, eh, Steed?
Well, it's hard to refuse.
Yes. Only one condition, Mrs. Peel.
And that is?
You use your extra income to buy Steed some decent sherry.
Well, I'm all for that. I have none left, I notice.
And just what will you be doing, Steed, while I'm at Cypher HQ?
Me? Well, if it's a fine day tomorrow, I think I may have my windows cleaned. That's an idea, isn't it?
It was a fine day, and John Steed looked up the address of Classy Glass Cleaning in the telephone book and called upon their premises.
Good morning, sir. Good morning. Lather is the name, Charles Lather.
John Steed, I'm looking for a window cleaner.
Oh, well then, look no further. At Classy Glass, the world is our window. Just observe our thoroughness, sir. Look at our trainees.
Lather motioned to 3 young men who were practicing on ladders, cleaning away like fury at huge panes of glass.
Anti-clockwise, James. Now, anti-clockwise. Always anti-clockwise. Perhaps, sir, they will try the easy way, though.
Oh, can't be too careful.
Exactly. There are no shortcuts to the tops of our ladders. Here we really care about windows.
I'm delighted to hear it.
Oh, beautiful, Wilson, beautiful. Lovely touch with the lever. Just a shade more wrist action. There's a good lad. We only use the finest camel skins, you know, Mr. Steed.
Camel skins?
They hold twice as much water.
Oh, of course, yes.
Now, we offer 3 services. Wash and dry, cream shampoo with a hot air finish, and our deluxe spirit treatment with a full leather glazing and crystal clear finish.
Nothing but the best.
Splendid. I booked for you for our deluxe. And now, approximately... Howard! I have told you before, Howard, the bucket in your left hand, held loosely but firmly at right angles to your hip. The hip, boy. Now, all together, that's better. There you go. I'm so sorry, Mr. Steed. Approximately how many windows will you require treatment?
Approximately 1.
1?
Family seat. I had the rest of them boarded up.
Boarded up? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Steed. We have a duty to our employees. The sight of all those boarded windows, well, we've had an crack under less.
Oh, it is a pity. I'm only just round the corner from one of your regular clients. The Cypher headquarters and Ministry of Defence.
Cypher headquarters? Oh, right, I don't recall. Ah, yes, I remember now. Of course, double glazed with moulded frames. Ghastly. But we haven't touched it for months. We used to have the contract, but we gave it up. Uneconomical. Besides, all that grave, that's quite soul-destroying.
Oh, I see.
But if you ever decide to reopen your windows...
Well, you'll be the first to know. Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Steed. Now, boys, left hand from the hip, please. From the hip.
Steed left and got into his car. As he pulled away, a small van came from the back of the building and followed him. Watch that driving mirror, Steed. Watch it.
Now,
John Steed, following the vaguest of clues, had called at the offices of Classy Glass Cleaning. A gentleman who called himself Charles Lather was in charge of a training session involving 3 apprentices.
Anti-clockwise, boys, anti-clockwise. Oh, I'm so sorry, Mr. Steed, but your assignment really does sound too small. You know, only one window, and all the others boarded up. Well, I ask you.
Oh, it's a pity. I'm only just round the corner from one of your regular clients, the Cypher headquarters, Ministry of Defence.
Cypher headquarters? Ah, yes, I remember now. Double glazed with moulded frames. Ghastly. But we haven't touched them for months. We gave up the contract. Uneconomical. But if you ever decide to reopen your windows, Mr. Steed...
You shall be the first to know.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning, Mr. Steed. Now, boys, left hand from the hip. From the hip, please.
Steed left and got into his car. He started it up and pulled away from the building. As he did so, an open van with ladders slung across the back came from the rear of the courtyard. Steed took off down the road. The van followed him. Episode 4 of this story, in which John Steed is made to realize that window cleaners can be very dangerous, and Emma Peel almost sees another murder committed in the super-secret Cypher Snatch. The department of MI-12 was in a rare panic. They'd lost 2 men, Jarrett and Peters. Ferret, who was in charge of forensics and very actively involved, had appealed to Mother. Mother had agreed to help, but apart from making a few phone calls and drinking most of John Steed's sherry, he hadn't got very far. He'd put Steed and Mrs. Peel on the case, and they'd followed through on evidence from some photographs of Jarrett's. Peters had been killed by a man posing as a window cleaner. There was a window cleaning van in one of the photographs, hence Steed's visit to classy glass cleaning. It had been amusing, but not very helpful. At least, that's what Steed was thinking as he drove away.
Jarrett got into the Cypher HQ. Everyone denies that he did. But he did because he took the photographs, and we know the date from the calendar on the desk. Now, an attempt was made to destroy the photographs, which shows they must be important. The only clue on the photograph was the window cleaning van. Well, perhaps it was just coincidence. Nothing more than coincidence.
But in the open van, following at a discreet distance, Maskin and Vickers had other ideas.
Yeah, still got him up ahead.
Yeah, he won't get away. We'll pull up nearer to him once we get out in the country. Ladders all ready?
Board them. 2 across the roof. 1 sticking out the back. One I can use over the side.
Right. Let's see what we can do.
John Steed was taking his time, driving thoughtfully and leisurely. He hardly noticed the open van until it was almost on him, hogging the road.
What the devil? Well, pass if you want to pass.
Steed gestured irritably to the van to pass. The road was narrow. The van approached and swerved. A steel ladder in the body of the van swung out as though by accident. It missed Steed's car by inches.
All the crazy lunatics. Oh, wait a minute. Steel ladders. Did I say it might be coincidence? That's a lot.
Now, from the back of the van, Vickers, using another longer steel ladder, swung it from side to side, reaching out for Steed's windscreen. Steed braked, swerved, and pulled off the road. The van disappeared round the bend in the road. Steed muttered an oath under his breath that condemned all window cleaners to perdition and started the car again, determined to get to grips, this time on his own terms. There was no question about not being able to catch them up. The small van couldn't get away, but the road was narrow and twisting. Steed, using all his racing knowledge, soon made progress, and then coming round a sharp bend, there, stretched across steel trestles, were 4 ladders, their ends pointed like lances. It was like a tank trap, and Steed drove straight into it. Mrs. Peel, for her part, had agreed to help out in the latest plan of MI-12, which was to place in Cypher headquarters a fresh agent. Someone who could move in without creating too much attention and keep an eye on things from the inside. Mrs. Peel had been chosen for the task. The danger money was an extra 5 shillings a day. Mrs. Peel was not impressed.
You're allowed to smoke, if you wish.
Thank you. No, I won't. Please, go ahead.
I don't seem to have a light. I wonder...
Excuse me. Yes, Mr. Webster?
Will you come in, please, Mrs. Peel, and bring your book with you?
Yes, sir. Excuse me, Mr. Murray.
Yes. Good morning. Please take a seat.
Thank you.
You have been checked through security, I take it. All your papers are in order.
Mr. Murray has been most thorough. There's no need for the department to go any further checking. I have a 3-star clearance.
Is this Mother's doing?
Pardon?
Mother. Oh, come, Mrs. Peel. This is Cypher headquarters. We are used to unraveling complicated puzzles. You surely don't think a man like myself is going to accept an outside appointment like yours without checking. Mother has planted you on me, hasn't he?
No. Ferret of MI12, actually.
I wish they'd get on with their work and leave us to deal with ours. All right, I'll accept the fact that they have trouble and they're trying everything. All right, I won't complain, providing you do your job like everyone else.
I have all the qualifications, Mr. Webster. I might be able to do you a bit of good. I promise I won't do any harm.
Right. Well, having cleared that away, perhaps you'd be good enough to get me Q file. You'll have to present my signature to Murray. It's top secret. Here. Bring it straight back in here, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Webster.
With that, Mrs. Peel left the boss's office and found Murray, who was still looking for a light for a cigarette.
Mr. Webster wants Q Cypher file. Here's his signed authorization.
Right. This is the most important part of the whole Cypher system. It's automatic, of course. Works on the right combination of buttons.
Mrs. Peel took out the correct file and was about to ask Murray to close the machine when she looked out of the window. There, down in the courtyard, was a small van, classy glass cleaners, clearly marked on the side. Mrs. Peel frowned, paused. 2 men got out of the van and moved to the back, removing a series of steel ladders from the roof.
Come along now, the file.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Mrs. Peel moved swiftly over to her desk and picked up a telephone.
Outside line, please. Thank you.
What about that light? Darned if I can find one.
Oh, there's some matches in my handbag. Just a moment. Here you are.
Yeah, thanks.
Mrs. Peel listened intently to the phone ringing at the other end. There was no reply. No reply because the number she was ringing was John Steed's car telephone, and John Steed was lying beneath it, hardly conscious. Steed picked himself up from the floor of the wrecked car. The car phone had stopped ringing. Steed looked around him. His bowler had been torn by the steel ladder that was jutting through the broken windscreen. Steed picked it up shakily and patted the metal casing. Then he reached for the phone and dialed operator.
Hello? Hello, operator. Could you get me Lessington? Cypher HQ, please. It's very urgent.
Sorry, sir. All the lines are engaged.
Well, then use the security line, please. 010.
Hello, caller. I'm afraid the security line's out of order.
I see. Thank you.
Steed thought for a moment and then rang another number. In Mother's apartment, the phone shrilled.
Mother speaking.
Monat, Steed. Look, how quickly could you get someone round to Cypher headquarters?
Well, I suppose I could get one of those dreary people from MI12. Ferret himself, perhaps.
Good. Then send him off there straight away.
Right. But what's all this about, Steed? Where are you and what's happened?
I can't explain. There really isn't time. But I think someone should get over there at top speed in case Mrs. Peel needs some help. I can't get there quickly enough myself. I'm down in the country and rather tied up with a ladder at the moment.
A ladder?
Yes, and I've a nasty feeling that the other parts of it are about to be used down at the Cypher HQ. Don't waste any time, Mother. This is an emergency. Bye.
But look here, Steed, really...
Ferret?
Mother, a job for you, Ferret. Write down your own rabbit warrant, too. Get over to Cypher HQ, find Mrs. Peel, and don't walk under any ladders on the way. That's an order.
Ferret knew Mother in this mood. He didn't argue. He moved. Arriving at the headquarters, he was staggered to find not a soul in the courtyard.
No one here. No guards on duty. No one. What the? The devil.
The passageways were silent and empty. Ferret, in near panic now, ran the length of the corridor and burst into the office that had been given to Mrs. Peel. She stood by the desk, her hand still on the telephone in its cradle. Her eyes stared sightlessly.
Mrs. Peel? Mrs. Peel, are you all right? Mrs. Peel?
Mrs. Peel didn't move or acknowledge his presence in the room.
Mrs. Peel, what happened?
A wet window cleaner's leather dropped over Ferret's face. He struggled for air, but the leather tightened into a shiny brown mask, tighter and tighter, suffocating him. He stopped struggling eventually and sagged to the floor, dead. Mrs. Peel stood still, frozen, expressionless, looking down at the body. No. Mrs. Peel stood in her office at Cypher headquarters, her hand still on the telephone that rested in its cradle. She stared ahead of her, totally ignoring Ferret, who'd burst into the room.
Mrs. Peel? Mrs. Peel, are you all right? Mrs. Peel?
Mrs. Peel didn't move, or even look at him.
Mrs. Peel? What happened?
A wet window cleaner's leather dropped over Ferret's face. He struggled for air, but the leather tightened into a shiny brown mask, stretching tighter and tighter, suffocating him. He stopped struggling eventually and sagged to the floor, dead. Mrs. Peel still stood, frozen and expressionless, looking down at the body. Episode 5 of this story, in which John Steed gets back into the attack, and Emma Peel is completely confused by the activities that lead up to the super-secret Cypher Snatch. Mother had been alerted by John Steed that there would be more trouble down at the Cypher headquarters. He'd got hold of Ferret from MI12 and sent him down there at top speed. Ferret had arrived to find the whole place as silent as a grave, as though time was standing still. Then he'd been viciously attacked and suffocated. Mother waited impatiently for news, and John Steed, in his wrecked car, just hoped he'd got the call through in time. Forlorn hope, Steed.
Let's just try once again.
Steed lifted the car telephone.
Operator, try that Lessington Cypher HQ for me again, please.
I'm sorry, caller, there's no reply from that number.
There must be. There are hundreds of people working in that building.
We've been trying to raise them, folks are examining.
The security line?
010, it's still out of order.
I see. Thank you. Something wrong. Something very wrong. And how the devil do I get out of this?
Steed looked down at the wreck of his car. He moved round to where the steel ladder stuck through the windscreen.
Well, we can get rid of all this to start with.
Steed cleared the windscreen of the rest of the glass and threw the steel ladder into the nearest ditch.
Now, let's see if we can get going. Right. Time 4 o'clock. Just got an hour. Here we go.
Outside the entrance to the Cypher headquarters, the guard yawned behind his hands and surreptitiously glanced at his watch. It was almost 5 o'clock, but inside the building the place was still alive with activity.
How's it going, Miss Peel?
Oh, fine, just fine, thank you, Mr. Murray. Nothing to it.
Got a light? I really must try to remember where I put my lighter.
You're always borrowing matches from me. Why only...
What is it? What's the matter?
Oh, nothing. Just something teasing the back of my memory. It's strange. I've got 100% recall out of my training. I never...
Your training? You mean as a shorthand typist or a confidential secretary?
I mean as a... Oh, never mind.
Mrs. Peel, haven't you found that Q file yet?
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Webster. Yes, I have it here. I must just have forgotten to bring it in through to you.
Perhaps, what's the time? Almost 5.
Oh, so it is. How the afternoon's flown.
Well, there's no time to deal with it now. Better put it back in security and let me have it first thing in the morning.
Yes, Mr. Webster. I'll do just that.
Mrs. Peel looked at Murray, who opened the cabinet for her. Then she turned to her desk. Suddenly she stopped and looked down at the carpet. at the spot where Ferret's body had fallen. Again, a worried frown wrinkled her forehead.
Total recall. Can't be. I can't forget things. I can't. It's impossible.
When Mrs. Peel left the building that afternoon, she found John Steed parked in his car under the trees across the road. She walked briskly over to him and immediately noticed the windscreen.
Instant air conditioning? You all right, Steed?
Just about.
How did it happen?
With the compliments of classy glass, the people who really care about windows. Steel ladders can make very effective long-range weapons.
I see. So they are involved.
Very much so. I rather expected you to tell me. Weren't they here this afternoon?
Classy glass cleaners? No, why should they be?
That's funny. I couldn't have got it wrong. What time did Ferret leave?
Ferret?
Well, he's been here most of the afternoon. After my accident, I phoned Mother and told him to send Ferret down here at once. I mean, knowing Mother, it would be done, and knowing Ferret, he would have obeyed Mother.
Well, he hasn't been near us. It's been a perfectly ordinary, perfectly boring day. If Mr. Ferret's been in the building, I would have seen him, I'm sure of that.
You're certain?
Well, if you don't believe me, phone him and check.
I have. He isn't back yet. No Ferret, no window cleaners.
None whatsoever. Anyway, they'd hardly clean windows when it's raining most of the day.
Raining? It hasn't rained where I've been. Look, my umbrella's still folded, not used, and...
Steed reached up and hooked the handle of his umbrella round the branch of a tree. He pulled it to and fro energetically.
No raindrops on these trees. Dry as a bone. No rain.
But that's ridiculous. Well, I'm sure it was raining earlier. It did, Steed.
And if it didn't? Well, come on, I'll buy you dinner, and then later we'll go to work.
Where?
3 guesses.
3? Classy 1, glass 2, cleaning 3.
Got it in 1. Come on.
The fenced yard at the back of Classy Glass Cleaning housed about half a dozen vehicles. When Steed and Mrs. Peel arrived at the yard, it was quite dark. Steed slipped his umbrella over the fence, catching the latch and pulling it to release the lock.
There's plenty of trucks.
I suppose it could be a perfectly harmless company.
Not on your life. I wondered. The steel ladder soon convinced me I was wrong. A very lethal line in ladders. Now, you take that side, Mrs. Peel, and I'll take this.
Steed!
What is it? Found something?
In this van, look. Open the door a bit further. Look, there on the floor.
It was the body of Ferret. The cleaning leather still stretched across his face. Steed removed it gently.
One of the tricks of the trade, eh?
I told you he wasn't at Cypher HQ.
That's what they said about Jarrett, wasn't it? Shh, someone's coming. Down.
Time to take him home, I reckon.
Anything special?
Well, popping in a bar, I reckon. Could look like an accident.
Right. How about tomorrow? Still on?
Of course it is. Tomorrow's yesterday again, if you get my meaning. Open the gate.
Steed and Mrs. Peel crouched back in the shadows as Maskin backed the truck with Ferret's body in it out of the yard.
But what does it mean? Steed, I swear they couldn't have been at the HQ. I was watching those files all day and nothing happened.
Except that it rained.
Yes. And I forgot the Q file.
What's that?
Oh, nothing. But I've got the strangest feeling as though today didn't happen at all.
Well, then tomorrow we'll make certain. Every 30 minutes you phone me, no matter what.
And if I stop phoning you?
I'll be there, post haste. And I'll make sure I don't walk under any ladders.
Next morning, Mrs. Peel reported for duty at the Cypher HQ.
Good morning, Mr. Webster. Do you want the Q file?
Ah, yes. Must get on with it today. Oh, but first, may I have your attention, please, everyone in this department? May I have your attention, please? I think I should tell you all now that the output from the cipher and decoding departments has deteriorated remarkably over the last week. While I realize that the work is demanding and accuracy is vital, there is no excuse for the lack of effort. I trust you will all do what you can to rectify this situation without delay. That's all.
At
don't know why he's so upset. Everyone's working the same as always.
Mr. Murray, did it rain yesterday?
Yes, of course it did.
And the day before?
Miserable. What's that got to do with it?
Just a thought. Hello, Steed.
You guessed. How's the weather, Mrs. Peel?
Changeable.
Splendid. Keep in touch.
By the way, it might be worth having another look at those photographs.
Any particular reason?
According to Webster, nothing gets done here anymore.
Well, in that case, Mrs. Peel, we mustn't waste time in idle chatter. Back to the wheel, eh? Just keep in touch. Bye.
Mrs. Peel did. At 10 o'clock, she phoned Steed.
10 o'clock, all's well.
Any faces at the window?
Not at the moment.
Personal calls are not encouraged, Mrs. Peel. Do you mind?
Oh, sorry, Mr. Webster. Face at the office door. Bye, Steed.
There were no ladders placed against the wall of the building that morning, but out along a country highway, the van of classy glass cleaners stopped, and Vickers and Maskin took down a steel ladder and propped it up against a telephone pole. A few other men watched as Vickers climbed the ladder and made some adjustments to the wiring. Then he yelled down.
Okay, the line's blocked.
Good. Harper and Young, cover the road. Davis and Waller, in the trees at the back there.
Same as before, sir. Scare them off.
Yeah, unless John Steed shows his face.
Then what?
Put a bullet in it, that's what.
Out along a country highway, heading for Lessington, was a fleet of small vans. They all belonged to the classy glass cleaning company. They stopped at a lay-by. The man known as Maskin seemed in control. He motioned with his arm to Vickers, who got out, took a steel ladder from the top of the van, and placed it incongruously against a telephone pole. A few other men watched as Vickers climbed the ladder and made some adjustments to the wiring. He held a radio handset to his ear and then yelled down,
Okay, line's blocked.
Good. Harper and Young, cover the road. All right, in here. Davis and Waller, in the trees at the back there. Same as before, sir. Scare them off. Yeah, unless John Steed shows his face here. Yeah, then what? Put a bullet in it, that's what.
Episode 6, the final episode of this story, in which John Steed and Emma Peel clean up everything, including the window cleaning men, and foil the final attempt at the super-secret Cypher Snatch. John Steed was more than a little baffled. 3 men from MI-12 had been killed, all, Steed suspected, by someone who worked for the classy glass cleaning co. But how and why, and what it had all got to do with the British Cypher headquarters, was still a mystery. Mrs. Peel had been planted in the HQ to keep a watchful eye on the staff, but far from throwing any light on matters, Mrs. Peel herself seemed to have turned extremely forgetful. Steed didn't like it one little bit. The only clues he had were 3 photographs taken by Jarrett before he died. 3 photographs of the Cypher headquarters. 1 exterior shot, which showed one of the window cleaning vans parked in the forecourt, and 2 interior shots. One of George Webster, the man in charge, and the other of Murray, the security man. Steed had a projector and had blown the prints up to a large size.
And yet I'm darned if I can see anything unusual about them. The cleaning van must be implicated in some way, but what way? What about this? Security man, Murray, leaning against a desk, smoking. Or at least with a cigarette in his hand. And Weston himself sitting at his desk with an inane look on his silly face. None of it's very helpful. Now, what's that magnifying glass? Still don't understand. Wait a minute. Murray smoking. His hands. Cigarette looks as though it's right up against his fingers. Burning his fingers. Yeah, one of the fingers has got a piece of surgical tape round it. Now, what intelligent man would stand there and let a cigarette burn his fingers unless...
Got an idea, Steve? About time.
Hello, operator. That number, Cypher HQ at Lessington.
I'm sorry, sir, the line is out of order.
Blast. Can't be out of order. The security line 010 is also unattainable. It just can't be. What now?
Better get going, Steed. And on the road near Lessington, a crowd of window cleaners went about their business.
Hello? Yeah. Right. Reporting all clear at the gate of the Cypher HQ, Maskin.
Right, Vickers. All masks on them men and into the vans. Yes, all right. Usual drill, no opposition, classic approach.
Right,
Have a go. Can't go a minute.
All right,
The men departed to their various vans, they boarded them, the engines started up and the vans pulled off. To the casual bystander, it was merely a fleet of window-cleaning vans after a rather big job. Approaching the Cypher headquarters sometime later, a guard stepped out and challenged the leading van.
Hello? Will you please say your passes?
Well, of course. Take a good look, friend. This is your pass.
Maskin wound down the window and pointed the nose of a tube straight into the guard's face. A spurt of white vapor shot into the guard's face.
Right, I'll take care of the main entrance. Make sure they hit those ventilators fast.
Right. Come on, men. Here we go.
Other vans appeared and drove straight through the open gates. Within a matter of minutes, steel ladders were propped against the walls and white-coated cleaners climbed onto the roofs. From their buckets, they took small cylinders.
Right, this is a big one, Bill. Better make sure your mask is okay.
Right. Right, okay.
Solid off one.
All over the building, they released the gas into the ventilation shafts. The effect upon the inmates was immediate. They froze in their tracks, stood or sat exactly where they were, quite immobile. Maskin and 3 of his men entered the main building without opposition.
Right, men. That's enough of it. Open the windows.
Shut!
All right, give it a few minutes.
Well, shall we right now? I think we'll take the masks off.
Yeah, it's cleared up. All right. Masks off then, men.
That's a bit better. I'll breathe a little easier now.
Yeah. Right, you 3 men come with me. The filing cabinets will be opened. Everything photographed. Vickers, see to the dictaphone unit.
Right, come on, men. Look lively.
Okay, right. Come on now. We want to get these files open. I want to finish the old job today. Okay. Vickers, open that cabinet. The top secret one.
Right.
Yeah, that's it. Everything in these files got to be photographed at once.
In the inner office, Emma Peel sat near George Webster's desk. They were both staring silently in front of them. Emma Peel had a notebook on her knee. The door opened and Vickers came in. He placed a dictaphone on the desk, connected it, and grinned as he pressed the starting button.
The time is 10:30, and it has just begun to rain. It is a perfectly normal, perfectly ordinary day, and work continues as it would on any ordinary day. It is now 11:15, raining quite heavily now, but still a perfectly ordinary day.
Vickers grinned again, left the machine running and closed the door. John Steed was not fool enough to approach the Cypher headquarters by the main entrance. Once he noticed the fleet of cleaning vans in the forecourt, he headed for the woods at the back of the building and moved stealthily through them. One of the classy glass guards was foolish enough to light a cigarette. As he struck the match, the hook of Steed's umbrella came round the tree, fastened itself round the man's neck, and pulled him back viciously against the tree trunk.
Smoking on duty? Oh, very bad for the throat and lungs. Like this.
A short while after, Steed, in the white overalls of a cleaner, walked confidently up to one of the armed guards on duty.
What's wrong? Anything wrong out there in the woods?
Good morning. I don't think so.
What? What the devil are you doing with that umbrella?
This? Oh, this.
Well brollied, Steed. Steed, swinging his very useful umbrella, walked confidently into the main building, where the high-speed photography of all top-secret papers was going ahead quite smoothly.
How many more to go? The last lot now.
A perfect operation. Now, I'm getting hungry. Murray sandwiches.
Vickers approached Murray's desk. The security man was staring down at a pad in his hand and didn't move when Vickers opened the top drawer of his desk and removed a package of sandwiches.
You like one, Maskin? Ham and chutney. Good.
No, thanks, no. Time to check our patients now.
Oh, gas will hold them for another hour yet.
Maskin walked into Webster's office. There was a pause and...
Oh, try this for size.
Steed dropped a window cleaning pail on Maskin's head. And picking him up, threw him across the room.
What the... It's Steed. Oh, get...
Never speak with your mouth full, old chap.
Here, get him!
Back in Webster's office, Steed locked the door. The dictaphone was still monotonously droning out its message.
It is now 35 minutes past 3, and the rain has stopped. But the skies are still cloudy, and it is a perfect...
Steed switched off the dictaphone and spoke rapidly into it.
Listen carefully, Mrs. Peel. I shall count up to 3, and you'll wake in a perfectly normal way. 1, 2, 3. Wake up.
Steed slipped a pair of headphones over Mrs. Peel's ears and switched on the dictaphone. 3 seconds later...
Oh, Steve, hello.
A busy day, Mrs. Peel?
Not particularly. Nothing really interesting happened, really. What the devil's that?
Funny you think it so dull. Watch out! 2 men rushed in. Steed dodged one, hit the second hard. Mrs. Peel, not to be left out, seized the first one, got a good hold, and threw him through the window.
What happened to cause all that, Steed?
Sleeping on the job, Mrs. Peel. Assisted by the latest line in hypnotic gases. Come on, let's see if we can't get Mother.
Stay where you are, Steed. That'll be quite sufficient.
Lather. Might have known. Chap who owns classy glass. Well, I suppose someone had to train these types to kill as well as clean.
You've caused us a great deal of trouble. But your mistake was meeting us on our own ground. Now, don't move. This gun is loaded.
And you've got them all. Jarrett, Peters, and Ferret.
Hardly disturb the office routine. That's the beauty of hypnotics. People only see what they want to see.
Well, it is useful, I agree. You'll just climb in any window and no one blinks an eye.
Exactly. Even when I pull this trigger, Steed, no one will react.
Sorry, old chap, but you've forgotten the cardinal rule for window cleaners.
What's that?
Never leave your ladder unattended.
Mrs. Peel, who had been standing near the window, had seized the end of it and pulled it into the room. Lather turned, Steed knocked the gun out of his hand and hit him. Mrs. Peel pulled the whole ladder into the room and dropped it on Lather's head.
So he was behind it all. That's the man. What happened?
A snake in the grass? Well, yes, naturally. I mean, with all these ladders about, there's bound to be a snake somewhere. Care for lunch on this perfectly ordinary day, Mrs. Peel?
Avengers. Listen every evening, Monday to Friday, to John Steed and Emma Peel, The Avengers.